Lately, I find myself looking at my altar, and I genuinely don't know what belongs there anymore. I have been practicing for a long time, and my practice has looked a lot of different ways. And during that time, my altar has changed as I move from chapter to chapter. In the last year or so, my practice has changed more than it ever has. I moved across the country, from Florida to the Oregon coast, and I removed the Wiccan aspects from my practice. Specifically, I stopped celebrating the Wheel of the Year, which was previously a pillar in my practice. That has been both a blessing and a curse because it's made my practice more localized, and that is why I moved away from the wheel in general. But it's also taken away a very comfortable framework and also felt isolating because a lot of the witchy community celebrates the Wheel of the Year. In this video, we are going to go over all of that as I discuss the different types of altars you could have. This is not an exhaustive list, just common ways that witches organize their altars, and I hope by speaking these ideas out loud, I will find clarity for myself and also be able to help anyone in a transitional period of their practice or who is just getting started and wondering, what should I put over there? First, we'll talk about how my altar used to look, which was very Wiccan-centric and aligned with the Wheel of the Year. This altar was very symmetrical and ceremonial. The left side of the altar is usually the goddess side, and the right side is the god, as there is this duality found within Wicca. The masculine and the feminine are something that I grapple with, as I am a traditional astrologer, and within the planets we do have this duality. Venus is feminine, Mars is masculine. So I'm really debating if I still want to have any of that on my altar. Previously, I had one candle to represent the masculine on one side and the feminine on the other, as well as specific items that aligned with those things. For example, a chalice and water are located on the goddess side, and the fire and the athame are located on the masculine side. In the middle, there's a pentacle, as Wiccan altars are constructed with balance of the four corners, the four elements. I do work with the elements in my practice, and the idea of sacredly organizing it by them does feel like something that still aligns with me, as does dividing it by masculine and feminine, but not through a Wiccan perception, but rather a traditional Hellenistic astrologer perception. What is happening astrological is very significant to me, as are the seasons that we are experiencing here on Earth, which is why I was drawn to the Wheel of the Year. And I loved when I changed my altar based on the Sabbats, and it felt like my altar was a living calendar. My problem with that is I have only been here a full year, and I have only seen the Oregon coast Wheel of the Year one time, and I'm still learning which correspondences align to different points in the year. For example, the 1st of spring is the beginning of Aries season, but on the Wheel of the Year, it is Ostara, a celebration of fertility, correspondences being rabbits, eggs, vibrant spring colors, fresh flowers. Those were previously the items I would have on my altar during that time, but now that I have deconstructed the Wheel of the Year, deconstructed Ostara, and not felt a personal connection to it, it doesn't really make sense for me to have those things on my altar. So instead of that, I'm building my own Wheel of the Year using astrology. So the 1st of spring, the beginning of Aries season. That is our fiery first sign of the zodiac. So I might have correspondences for that on the altar during that time. But then also what I am experiencing seasonally here on the Oregon coast. A plant spirit that I could call upon for that would be the cherry blossoms, as they are in abundance during that time of year. Additionally, I feel called to have my altar reflect the lunar phases, and perhaps I could have something to reflect it waxing and waning through the different zodiac signs. This leads me into deity worship, which I am a pantheist. I see the gods and goddesses as personifications of nature rather than conscious beings. Though I have had some experiences that make me question this, deities have always been something that really puzzled me. In the witchcraft community, people have a very different experience with the divine, and that has left me with a lot of questions. Why isn't this what someone else is claiming happening to me? And the only conclusion that I've come to is that divinity presents itself to us in whichever way would make the most sense to the individual, to us. Deities became a lot more confusing for me as I delved farther into astrology, because to some people, the planets are gods and goddesses within themselves, or at least divine archetypes. When you speak of Venus, you are invoking the spirit of that goddess, and also ones that came before her. For example, Ishtar, which was a Babylonian goddess, and what we called Venus prior to traditional Hellenistic astrology. And so if I worship the planets and I see them as divine messengers or hands of the gods and goddesses, do I also believe in them? Should I devote myself differently in my practice? That looks like statues on your altar, images, making offerings specific to that deity. Beyond the planets as gods and goddesses, there's also tons of mythology to do with the zodiac signs and the constellations, especially as it relates to specific cultures. A really good example of this would be the Pleiades, which is a star cluster in the Taurus zodiac sign that is visible from Earth. It is often called the Seven Sisters. That's what you may know it as. But basically every culture across the globe has a different name for this cluster of stars. That is something I love about astrology. The idea that all of our ancestors were staring up at the sky above them as the stars and the planets were painting pictures, and they wrote their own stories as they tried to make sense of what they were seeing. In Greek mythology, these stars were the seven sister nymphs of Artemis. But I'm gonna put a list on the screen of what different groups of people call these, and I would love to know if you grew up in any specific culture and came to know these stars by a certain name. Something about me, I have always felt like I was a pagan before I was a witch. Meaning I cared more about connecting to the earth, practicing a nature-based spirituality, rather than the actual spell work. And I'm not saying that is all that there is to witchcraft, but I definitely do less workings to get things, to manifest things into my life, rather than just find avenues to connect deeper to the land around me. Basically, my altar has always been like this living calendar rather than a place that I am actively doing a working. Usually I will do a working and then kind of take that down, or my workings are smaller and don't even take place at the altar. Like I will find somewhere to do them. A lot of witches will have like manifestation altars where they are actively working on things, and that is what their altar is for. Maybe their altar will be primarily dedicated to prosperity and they are working to attract abundance into their life. Or their altar is dedicated to dream work and they are trying to deepen their connection to that. That is less so me, but it's something that I want to do more of. I want to do more spells. I want to do more witchcraft. A spell to manifest or rid something of my life. That's definitely where I fall behind in my witchcraft practice as I just get busy with life stuff. But it's something that I enjoy so much and feel connected to things outside of myself in a different way. I want to make it a habit, so I want to create a spot on my altar for daily workings. Maybe that is a prosperity goal. Maybe that is writing on petition papers. Maybe that is daily tarot card pulls. In my daily life, I take the things that I am already doing and I make them magical. I make them part of my spiritual practice. But I would love to have more time dedicated to just the sacred rather than like I am cleaning my counters with intention, if that makes sense. Having a spot to venerate my ancestors is very important to me, both the ones that I knew in this life and the ones that I didn't. That could look like family photos, heirlooms, or items from the place that your ancestor was from that would be significant to them or their culture. The culture in which you and your ancestors are from is a huge aspect of folk magic. Folk just meaning people, magic of the people. There are different folk traditions, ways of laying out altars. That will inform what your practice and your altar looks like. And it's a journey that I've been on for some time, but it is such a confusing and slow process, figuring out what is authentic to me and feels appropriate to reclaim. I know that I am primarily French on my dad's side. I don't know much about my mother's side, and it is something that I'm still working back on, but records are few and far in between, and if you've been on this path, you know what that looks like. And on my mother's side, I have a lot of Scandinavian heritage, but none of it was super present within my life growing up. So it's more of a reconnection journey for me personally. But eventually I hope to have an altar that reflects that. That is this multifaceted living thing of all the parts of me. It is who came before me, who I am now living in the Pacific Northwest, and having natural items on my altar that match the spirits around me, the land spirits, the plants, the animals. I want to maintain my connection to the celestial, to the planets, the zodiac signs, and my interpretation of them, and whether or not that leads into venerating the planets as deities themselves. This is by no means an exhaustive list of what your altar might look like, but saying these things out loud has been helpful and inspiring to me, and I'm excited to get to work. I want you to know that there is no one right way to build an altar, and you can use anything that feels powerful and meaningful to you. If you're feeling a lot of these same thoughts, I would love to know down below. I can really empathize with you, even as someone who's been doing this a long time. As you change, your practice will change, and your altar should follow suit. The craft is never a destination. You never stop learning and growing, and that is what I love about it. I would love to know what your altar looks like now, whether or not you feel comfortable in it and you've kind of got a setup and you're like, this is what I do. That could be really helpful to myself and others if you leave your experience down below. But also if you are struggling like me to create something that reflects all of the parts of who you are, I would love to know what you're thinking and feeling in your thought process. I really hope that we can turn the comment section down below into a community space, somewhere to continue this conversation. Tell us, what is on your altar? What are the things that you're finding meaning in? And what are the things that no longer serve you and you might have to change? That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. And until next time, I hope you have a magical rest of your day. Goodbye, everyone.